I'm going to pass a pleading around. You can take a minute to look at it. It's one of my more obnoxious works, although it's not like I'm not known for being obnoxious. I'm hammering the judges now. If you look at the very last paragraph, you'll see that I'm hammering them financially and criminally too. Which to me, judge is just another word for criminal. There's a reason they wear black robes. There's a couple things I really want everybody to study on your own time. The reason being, you'll have a much better understanding of what's really happening. Most people think they're familiar with the Inquisition. How many people think they're familiar with the Inquisition? Okay, well, you're not. Most people call it the Spanish Inquisition. That didn't start until the early 1400s. But before that, the actual Inquisition predates the Magna Carta, which I'm sure we all know started in 1212 to 1256, but that's pretty common knowledge. The thing is, when you study what happened in the Inquisition, you're going to learn it's the same thing. I did a treatise on it a little while ago, some of you probably got it, that shows that what we're going through now is the exact same thing as the Inquisition. It's based on the same legal concepts, everything's being done the same. Instead of the Catholic Church killing off all the Christians, it's the bankers stealing all the property. So you replace Catholics with bankers, Christians with citizens, and property with murder, and it'll read the exact same. So I highly advise you spend a little time studying the Inquisition. You'll learn that the Inquisition used 3 types of notaries. And in place of that today, we use one notary doing 3 types of documents. But other than that, it's the same thing. Oh yeah, I got to make an announcement. This is all for education, entertainment. This is not legal advice. We do what we do. We do it on our own. We all help each other. Nobody's in charge. And I don't want to be in charge. So I really you got to spend your time. If you understand how they were able to do with the Inquisition, what they were able to do. In other words, they run around towns with notaries. And they'd say that somebody said such and such. The notaries would sign it off, seal it, and maybe you weren't even there. You might not have said anything. Once the notary stamps it that you said it, that's law. You're screwed. They're going to burn you at the stake. Does that sound a little familiar to anybody? What do? They notarize a bunch of fraudulent documents, put them to the county recorder's office, and next thing you know, they've stolen your property. It's the exact same thing. If back then, if everybody had killed off the notaries, which is the way they did things back then, the Inquisition would have ended. Okay, what we're really going to work on now is the criminal complaint. We know by all our experience in court, and by reading all the pleadings that the attorneys are putting in, and the judicial decisions, it's all based on a fraudulent presumption. Arizona law, that presumption is very obvious. It basically says that the court must presume that the bank is correct and that you're a liar. No matter what you do in court, if the court is reliant on a presumption, doesn't matter what you do in court. Do you understand that? The court says we have to rely on this presumption. So even if you put in evidence, even if you prove all of this crap, does the court still have to rely on that presumption? Now do you see why you aren't winning? So now we've got to go through, and we're going to file criminal complaints. The criminal complaints are posted. They're all set up they're redacted. You just plug in your stuff and file the criminal complaints. in law, do you understand that if you know there's been a felony committed, that you have to report it? Does everybody understand that? In federal law, it's 18 U.S.C. Section 4. It's called misprision of felony. Every state has its own law. If you know that a felony has been committed, you are responsible to report it. So, do we all know that felonies have been committed?
Yes.
Why didn't you report it?
We did.
Somebody give me a good reason why you knew that this felony was committed, and why didn't you report it?
Didn't think they'd act on it.
Actually, I reported it.
Good. But not thinking they'll act on it that's not an excuse. It's not. If you know that a felony's been committed, you must by law report it. Here's the problem in court. And I'll give you the problem and then I'll give you an example. To me, this is one of the most heinous crimes that can be committed on a person or a population in general. Stealing their property and stealing their rights to property, because rights are property. If you read Hamilton's essays and briefs on property and Madison's concept of property rights, you'll discover that rights in and of themselves are property. Now, they're intangible, almost like intellectual property, but rights are property. They're a thing, they're an intangible thing, but do you understand that rights are really property? They're something you own. Like you own your car, you own your rights. Do you get that? If you lose property rights, and rights are a property, what have you therefore lost?
Your rights.
Yes. So by stealing our property and using that to confiscate our property rights, have they not also confiscated all of our rights? That's what it's about. What?
That's a felony.
Well, yeah, that itself is a felony. That's a violation of your 14th Amendment. That notwithstanding, once they get our property, and our rights are property, when they get our property, they get our rights, and we're toast. That is why I say it's the same thing as the Inquisition. It's not about stealing your homes. It's not about stealing your land. It's about stealing your property. Rights are your property. When they get that, and you have no rights, let me explain something. The Second Amendment says that the government shall not infringe on your right to keep and bear arms. But if you can't own property, you have to live somewhere. So you go to some place and say, I want to rent an apartment here. And they say, that's fine, but in this complex we don't allow guns. Now what if all of the apartment complexes say that?
And they're doing that.
Yes, they are.
They're doing that.
Have you not just lost your Second Amendment right? But haven't you done it voluntarily so that you have a place to live? That's the end game of what they're doing. Don't misunderstand that. This has nothing to do with them stealing your home. So, when you look at it for what's really happening, you understand that you got to go to the foundation of it. But let's talk about the legal aspect. Another heinous crime, the crime of rape. A woman goes to a judge and says, hey, Bob raped me 2 years ago, I want to sue him. She files a court case. Court case starts, the first thing the judge is going to ask her is, where's the criminal report? She says, oh, I didn't file one. How far do you think that lawsuit's going to go if 2 years after the fact, whether it happened or not, and she never filed a criminal complaint, she goes to sue that guy? You think she's going to get very far? Why?
Because she didn't put in a complaint at the time it happened.
Well, because the presumption is that he didn't do it. If she filed the complaint of rape, then the presumption is that he did commit the rape. It's not incumbent upon whether he was convicted or acquitted. Do you understand that? In other words, by filing the rape charge, the presumption is now going to be in court civilly that he did commit the rape. So 2 years later, she could sue him because that presumption is going to sit in court that he did commit the rape. It's not incumbent upon whether or not he was acquitted or convicted. Perfect example of that is O.J. Simpson. I'm not talking the current case, I'm talking the previous case. Was he acquitted or convicted? Yeah, he won. Whether or not he was guilty, I don't care. That's really not the discussion. The point is he was acquitted.
Yeah, that's good.
So, but were the Goldmans still able to sue him? Did they win?
Yes.
But he was acquitted. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. The presumption is relied on the accusation, not on the determination. Does that make sense? When you accuse, the presumption becomes realistic. It's tangible. The concept of the determination by the criminal court does not fall over to the civil side. The accusation falls over to the civil side. It's exactly what's happening to us. They put fraudulent documents into the county recorder's office and create a presumption. Did they prove anything? But they made the accusation, therefore the presumption stands. So what must we do to reverse the onus probandi, as I always say, or just to annihilate the presumption?
Show fraud.
File the criminal complaint.
File a criminal complaint. It's not incumbent on the conviction. It's incumbent on the accusation. So we will file criminal complaints. Now, that is to stop the presumption. Where are you going to file them? Well, you'll use that document. You'll get copies of the documents filed in the county recorder's office. That's evidence of the fraud. It's prima facie evidence. In other words, they put this document in the county recorder's office. In Arizona, that's a felony. ARS 39-161, filing a fraudulent document. Well, the document itself is fraudulent and it has been filed. So that's prima facie evidence, right? It's incontrovertible. It can't be argued against. The document's filed and it is fraudulent. Now you have to understand the way that law is worded and the other laws that tie itself to that law. It really says cause to be filed. In other words, it's not the person that walks down and files it at the county recorder's office. It's whoever says go down and file. You understand that? That's why we go after the CEO, because he's in charge of the corporation. He's telling them go down and file these documents. So that's what's causing everything to be recorded. So it's his criminal liability. He has the culpability for the crime. You also want to contact the Arizona Attorney General. Now remember, they aren't going to file criminal charges against the CEO. I know that. You guys know that. You just need to reverse the onus probandi. Get rid of the presumption. By making the accusation, by filing the charges. Yes?
You want to back those charges up with the corner document or some type of evidence, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say that the documents filed are fraudulent unless you have the evidence that they are, right?
Right. You use a forensic examination, and when you look at the document that we did so that everybody has a template, you'll see you feed your stuff from the forensic examination right into the criminal complaint so that it makes sense. But you also want to supply the documents that were recorded in the county recorder's office.